Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. In 1947, Indian subcontinent was divided into two parts, Pakistan and India, and the Muslim majority areas and the Muslim princely states were given the right to accede to Pakistan. But one of the largest princely states, Kashmir, and Kashmiri's right was usurped by its Hindu ruler who gave Kashmir to India. And Indian forces illegally entered this territory and ever since had been occupying this territory illegally. There was a revolt against this Indian aggression, and then India went into the United Nations, and the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution on this day, 5th of January back in 1949, that says the question of the accession of the state of Jammu and Kashmir to India or Pakistan will be decided through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite. But to date, the innocent Kashmiris still await the fulfillment of this promise by the United Nations Security Council ever since Indian brutalities and atrocities in the occupied valley had been increasing manyfold. And by the sheer dint of force, they had been trying to suppress and oppress this particular indigenous freedom struggle. Back in 1989, this freedom movement also got a new vigor as the Indian atrocities and brutalities reached new heights. And on 5th of August in 2019, India unilaterally and illegally, in contravention of the international law, the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, the partition plan, the bilateral agreements with Pakistan on the Kashmir dispute, revoked the Article 370 of its constitution, snatching the autonomy of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and illegally annexed it. Ever since, innocent Kashmiris had been living in miserable condition, and this particular territory has been dubbed as the world's largest open-air prison. The international organizations, the human rights organizations, and the Indian international community had been repeatedly raising concerns and alarms over India's aggression and Indian authorities and occupying forces' high-handedness. But these repeated alarms have fallen on the deaf ears of the Indian authorities. Talking about Pakistan, Pakistan has always politically, diplomatically and morally supported the Kashmir cause on every international fora. Regarding the significance of today, the International Day for the Right of Self-Determination, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in his message has said, let me quote, that peace and development in South Asia are linked to resolution of Kashmir dispute on the right to self-determination. Today, I call upon the international community to play its part in giving Kashmiris of IIOJK their legal right to decide their destiny. And India must reverse its actions of August the 5th, unquote. Now, why Kashmiris are still waiting after the lapse of 74 years of this fulfillment of the promise by the United Nations and its Security Council, what the United Nations Security Council should have done over the years in order to implement its resolutions regarding Kashmir dispute, what sort of pressure the international community can exert right now in order to make India implement the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, and what options are left at the hands of innocent Kashmiris, and what Pakistan can do more in this regard. We'll be delving deeper into these particular questions, try to find the answer of these questions, and for that we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar. He is expert of foreign affairs, and also we are being joined in the studio by Dr. Waleed Rasool. He is Kashmiri leader. Thank you very much for your time, both of you gentlemen. We really appreciate that. And on Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz. He is senior analyst. Brigadier Nawaz, thank you very much for your time, also for being on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Waleed Rasool. Now, 74 years have passed. Kashmiris are still waiting for the fulfillment of that promise by the United Nations Security Council. Why the United Nations could not implement its relevant resolutions regarding the Kashmir dispute?
Actually, the main purpose to frame the United Nations was started from the failure of League of Nations, and same was converted into the United Nations. the crux to frame this higher global platform was to help the weaker one when any aggression is from hegemon or mightier one. So this was the basic fundamental principle of United Nations. But one could say that United Nations tried its utmost, but geopolitics, geoeconomics and geostrategics worked in various intervals of time, particularly when two resolutions were moved by UK, France, Turkey, and it was vetoed twice by Russia. So it is one of the cause. Number two is when you are making alignments and realignments in the region, the interesting parties do not consider that aggressor shall be stopped. This was the second factor. And third factor was, since the balance of power was hanging in Indian favor, so they played their role. And fifth factor was Indian economic clout currently, which works. But question rises then how weaker or the aggressed one can take dividend from those resolutions which are adopted by United Nations Commission of India and Pakistan. Number one, it is an legal authenticity of the dispute which is being continued in Indian occupied Kashmir against Indian aggression. Number two, it gives us right to resist against India because our struggle is legitimate as per international law. And number third, neither these resolutions can be withdrawn nor you can nullify these resolutions by hook or by crook. India has to rely upon this. And number fifth, we might say that solution is already there if United Nations resolutions are implemented, and we are struggling for that resolutions which are being advised by highest platform of the globe, that is United Nations. So there is hope and there is despair.
Right, Dr. Kausar, so there must definitely be a mechanism at the United Nations to implement such resolutions which actually require its attention the most.
See, I mean, when it comes to the resolutions, particularly on Kashmir, one thing we might miss in that context as well is, in past, I mean, there have been a lot of efforts towards this. Primarily, I guess the response when we live as a nation states now post 47, but after the colonial period here, what we see that there are some democratic norms, there are some democratic ethos that one nation has to follow. When you say you're a democratic, secular nation, or overall you're following democracy and democratic principles. I guess part of it directly relates with the nation's response towards democratic system and culture. When it comes to the Kashmir particularly, it's a big question on international community, particularly United Nations, of course, whose Security Council, particularly the basic purpose is to ensure international relations based on equity and self-determination as well. But I guess onus of responsibility to larger extent lies on India as well, who completely and time and again has been trying to evade, trying to dissuade and try to, move away from these commitments that made at international forums. And on the other side, you as an ambitious nation want to become the permanent member of United Nations Security Council. I mean, this is a dichotomy. This you have to understand that first. As a democratic nation, if you believe in democratic ethos, then you have to fundamentally agree to the principles and the Charter of the United Nations and of course the United Nations Security Councils, which India itself took Kashmir over there as well. Second, I guess if we see historically, there is also one thing we need to understand, as you mentioned about the Maharaja from the beginning. I guess there's also a lot of questions that what was the mechanism of that annexation, what so-called what we say when he tried to annex India with Kashmir with India. I guess the many independent reports and the writers say that it was very much forced at that time. And let's suppose if we accept that there was a sort of a document that he signed, and it is very much agreed that it was on a very broader things, let's suppose. The later India's intent showed that it was never in the favor of Kashmir. It was in fact it was about the land and the resources of Jammu and Kashmir, because post 5th of August 2019 it clearly shows that India systematically, structurally, if we say over the period of time, hollowed out all this annexation and made it a very, very centralized sort of system, continuously disempowering the nation, the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, bifurcating state, dividing people and all that. So this is also a question towards the larger nation of India as well.
It was a conspiracy hash right at the outset.
I guess from the very beginning, the things are very much clear. Now what we read and we understand that had it not been there, what was the need for this to do away with the Kashmiri identity, particularly with the 370 and 35A, because it shows that there was, of course, a sequence of it, and trying to make, try to deprive Kashmiris of basic identity, basic language, because that was the part of resistance as well. So right. This is very sad. I mean, on the one side, of course, United Nations has failed. I must say, this is a bigger question on the legitimacy and, of course, the credibility of that broader institution.
Right.
But also towards the nation like India, which generally says that it is a democratic nation, but of course, you can't be a democratic nation if a larger part of a Muslim identity state is disputed, and you are not going to solve, and you are not even thinking
right.
to talk on that.
Right, Dr. Kausar, your point is well taken. Let me
Actually,
bring in Brigadier Nawaz also into the discussion.
Non-aligned.
Dr. Rasool, I'll come back to you also.
Yeah.
Your point were taken well. And now we'll bring in Brigadier Retired Haris Nawaz into the discussion also. Brigadier Nawaz, as you have heard Dr. Kausar saying that it is responsibility of Indian authorities. Also, it continues to evade for implementing those resolutions, the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions regarding Kashmir dispute. Now, in that sort of a scenario, what happens to be the responsibility of the United Nations Security Council in particular in order to hold an evading party accountable?
You see, that's a more important thing. You see, when Jawaharlal Nehru himself went to United Nations, rather he kept running over there to stop the war in Kashmir, because the troops were going very close to occupying the complete of Kashmir. And there he requested, he agreed to the plebiscite right of self-determination. And then that accordingly the resolution was passed. And then it is a prime responsibility of the United Nations. Why the United Nations were formed after the Second World War? To resolve the conflicts of the nations. So there should be no World War, the Third World War, any conflict between that nation, and if there is at all, then they have to find a solution. But now the problem is United Nations is become a tool in the hands of superpowers to twist the arms of so many poor and weak countries. That is what they are doing it. So they are losing their impact, and that is the onus lie on the world powers and United Nations. It is your resolution, and then you have already posted United Nations Military Observer Group on the line of control to monitor that who is violating the ceasefire line. In Pakistan side, United Nations observation can go anywhere. Wherever they want to go in Kashmir, they are independent, they are allowed to go. But in Indian side, they don't even allow them to cross the Srinagar. So who is to implement all this? You see, that's the main thing we must understand. And then after that, what all is happening, and then of course, after 5th of August 2019, then things have totally changed because they revoked 370, 35A, and now they are just removed all autonomous part of Kashmir. They are flattering the Union flag over there. So now the responsibility again is towards Pakistan and more of Islamic country. They all say openly that when your Islamic countries are not bothered, OIC is not bothered, then why you are approaching us? It's a bilateral issue, you resolve yourself. So, and India have been saying, okay, it's a bilateral issue, but then they unilaterally, they just occupied it. Now is the time we have to stand up, and then we have to show strength, because Pakistan is the voice of Kashmiris. When somebody dies over there, and then they are wrapped in Pakistan flag. Likewise, it's a responsibility of all Muslim countries and OIC. If this resolution, through OIC it goes to United Nations, it carries a weight. Like Islamophobia was ultimately accepted over there, that it has to be, I think, in May, month of May, every year it will be announced. So likewise, now everybody has to stand, go to the United Islamic world. We have to go. It's not that we pass them on dossiers or we raise voice on certain occasions, 5th February or 5th January, and so on, or 5th of August. These are symbolic things. We have to do some actions, And I think after the shahadat of Burhan Wani, I think again new life beacon was shown to the young people, and they showed a lot of freedom struggle. But then the problem is, for how long they will keep fighting all these things? It is Indian army is not trained, are professional. They can kill only poor and weak Muslim young people, old people, women. Then they can even blind pellet guns. Rest all. Then it's all history. We are not doing the way we have to do all this. And for that, I will say, even now, today, we should pledge with the Kashmiri that, okay, we will become your voice. We will again go to the Islamic countries. I always say we go to the Islamic country first, then we should go to the United Nations, and it is their responsibility to respond positively. For that,
Right.
we have to go
Brigadier Nawaz, your
over
point
there.
is well taken. When we talk about the role of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the role of the Muslim brotherly countries, recently we saw the OIC Secretary General, Mr. Hussain Brahim Taho, also visiting, had a visit along the line of control also, and he categorically said that the world needs to know the kind of aggression and the atrocities which are being perpetrated by the Indian authorities and occupation forces over there. So there was a very strong reaction from the
Yes, sir.
Indian side on that.
So that's a thing, you see, and they will not allow OIC Secretary General to visit from the Indian sides to the Kashmir, Srinagar, and Jammu. So the point is now is very, very important. On that way, they are doing planned genocide. Their raw intelligences, their intelligence bureau, their other all organizations, paramilitary forces, they are really causing a lot of atrocities and genocide of Muslim people, Muslim. Their business are being destroyed. Then their complete orchards, fruit orchards have been razed to grounds. And then a lot of young people are already in the prison. What they have to do with? You see, and then their demographic changes are being done. It is just like Israel model, they are doing it now. That they are changing demographic changes over there, bringing Indian and they give buying properties over there. So we are just watching it. The Islamic world, there are two only problems, Palestine and Kashmir. If these two issues are solved, I think a lot of terrorism and so many things are going to finish.
Right, your
And then
point is
we
well
have
taken. Brigadier Nawaz, let me bring in Dr. Rasool also into the discussion. Now, especially after the revocation of Article 370, you have seen the international organization raising alarm and raising serious concerns regarding Indian authorities and occupation forces' behavior over there. But nothing concrete on the ground we have seen. Why do you think these alarms fall on the deaf ears of Indian authorities? Is it because of the Hindutva-driven ideology they are pursuing right now?
Actually, you see that it is a right of India to follow any ideology, whether it is a fascist or any democratic. But it is a responsibility of OIC to follow the same mechanism which is being followed by NATO as per their Article number 3. There should be a military alliance between the Muslim countries, then the OIC will be the potent force. Number one. Number two, we have couple of meetings, rather dozens of meetings with OIC delegations and their foreign ministry level. Definitely they are pursuing the issue, they are pursuing the dispute, and they are trying their utmost, but there should be some sort of unity and unanimity between the Muslim countries. Then the matter will move forward. So now question arises whether what is the potential of the OIC presently? Where do OIC stands nowadays?
Right. Dr. Kausar, when Dr. Rasool has just mentioned that there should be a military alliance among Muslim countries from the platform of OIC on the very much lines of the NATO, I mean, what do you think? Is it a viable option? Can this particular option help to deal with this particular dispute?
See, I mean, I would say two things, particularly when it comes to the role of international community when it comes to Kashmir. I mean, right now, if we see the politics of BJP, that's very much a difficult politics, honestly, when it comes to the international norms. And I mean, we have seen the polarization within India, and of course, the polarization in the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly among the communities, particularly Muslims and non-Muslims, and the way the divide has worked, and the way they try to isolate one community, the way they try to normalize this very strong and rigid regime and measures particularly. It's quite difficult. It's not that OIC has not reached to them. Of course, they must have reached to them. And many international, I mean, after post 5th of August 2019, if you see international community, I mean, of course, not by force, but if international media, think tanks, governments, they have strongly condemned the India's action particularly. I guess, of course, they have their own limitations. We are mindful of that limitations, but the silver lining is there that people recognize the right of self-determination of people of Jammu and Kashmir. One. Second, of course, they have been stressing a lot, particularly India, that to initiate a process of dialogue to resolve this issue, and in the international forces, international actors, they have been doing it. See, it's the response. Of course, to my understanding, BJP cannot sustain this pressure for too long. Of course, all this actually, that initial politics, if we see that is built on certain ideology of hate and divide, and of course, and that's very much there. But in longer run, I guess this politics could not sustain. Of course, India will see a different regime in future. You see the people taking on streets, particularly a Muslim community, if you see. Because of course, this is the outcome of certain policies by Indian government, particularly BJP government. So I guess the idea is that world keep on pushing them. Of course, right to self-determine the issues like Jammu and Kashmir on the agenda of United Nations Security Council, it has its own stature. Simply saying that we want to talk, we want to resolve, we'll resolve the way we like, it won't help, because there's a huge diaspora of Kashmiris. I mean, it's India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers, and of course, history says that once you don't resolve those disputes, it multiplies, it further complicates the issues. And of course, at the end of the day, you have to resolve, you have to talk, you have to, accept that there is a greater issue that is, sort of impeding the progress and development in the region as well. So of course, OIC need to put more action, but there are many areas in Kashmir particularly which we are not talking. We need to understand that right now, the surveillance, the crackdown, the state overall surveillance to the civilians and civil liberties is, the restrictions are very much there, and the spaces for
we'll
political
be talking
leaders
about the kind of measures the Indian authorities are taking over there in order to suppress that freedom movement in IIOJK. Now, Brigadier Nawaz, as Dr. Rasool has mentioned, that there should be a military alliance when it comes to collaboration among the OIC member countries. Do you think this particular alliance on the lines of NATO could be a viable option when it comes to dealing with the pressing issues the Muslim Ummah or Muslim community globally is facing collectively?
You see, Dr. Rasool, I think to an extent is absolutely fine. The point is, whenever you negotiate or you talk to anyone, you talk from the strength, the more strong you are, the more convincing you are. And then you talk with a lot of strength behind you. So, if NATO is strong, why can't so much wealth we have in the Middle East? And it's all being wasted out. The point is, why can't we have our own military hardware, different factories? Why can't we have our banking system, own Islamic banking system, so that we don't beg IMF and World Bank for the poor countries? Then we need to have a lot of universities over there, information technology. All these things, why can't we do it? And then when you have a strong force, you've got a strong alliance, then the world community will listen to you with a lot of strength. When you are weak, nobody bothers. And that's the only reason that nobody's pushed that what they will do it. What Israel doing is in Palestine. Likewise, India is doing in Kashmir, and we are just doing a lip service. So we have to now sit down and work out a strategy. And we have a Turkey, we have a Pakistan, we have Indonesia, very strong military powers, along with a lot of human brains which we waste out, and they're going abroad and serving those countries. So these are the factors, these are the facts. And then, of course, we should have a very good lobbying. I can assure you that our representative in the United Nations, and I don't know whosoever is now, but then he should be having a personal liaison with not only with 5 permanent members, but 10 non-permanent members. And then the more important is that we must use our region. We have 2 superpowers, China and Russia. Both are permanent members of the United Nations. And we have to tell them that Kashmir remain the flashpoint. And if there is any problem and there is a war, then you don't know the dynamics of how it ends. and it can spread the whole of this region. It's Iran, it is the Islamic countries, Afghanistan, Central Asia. So why don't we involve them? Their weight should be coming on India. Only then they should do it. But the problem is there are economic factors, there are strategic factors. That's why the world looked to other side where India carried out so many atrocities on Kashmiris. So we need to be strong ourselves. We should be clear in our mind what we want to do it, and with whom what we want to do it, what pressure we want to create to the international community, like NATO or even America, because we are just working on diverging axis. We are not centralizing our things. So these are the one of the most important factors that Pakistan and Islamic world and our region should be very strong to know that what is going to happen next in
And
case
that,
there is war.
Brigadier Nawaz, that owes to the economic stability and prosperity and development.
Absolutely. But you see, the point
Right.
is,
So when we talk about this idea of OIC forming a military alliance, having economic stability, the first and the foremost priority for that matter. Now, when we talk about this particular dispute, Kashmir region happens to be the nuclear flashpoint between Pakistan and India, and very categorical statements we have also seen from the former US presidents also, including Mr. Richard Nixon also. So when we compare the visit of OIC Secretary General, just a visit to the line of control, and there was such a hue and cry and such a strong reaction from the Indian side. So what can we expect if the Muslim countries collectively think of executing this idea of forming a collective military alliance? So India happens to be a nuclear power. So what sort of reaction could be expected in that scenario?
India is a nuclear power, then the Pakistan is also a nuclear power. The point is, initially we don't show our military strength when we get together in all Islamic countries. At least we show unity amongst ourselves. And we should be very clear that we have to stand up with one voice in the international community whenever some atrocity is being caused by any Muslim country. You see what happened to East Timor? Within, I think, few months, they were given independence because it was a Christian community. What happened in southern Sudan? The problem was solved. It's only Muslims who have been, you talk about Iraq, you talk about Libya, you talk about Syria, you talk about Afghanistan, Palestine, Kashmir, everywhere you see what is happening to Muslims because we are not united. That is the most important thing, and that realization should be amongst our Muslim countries.
Right, your point is well taken, Brigadier Nawaz. Your point is well taken, Dr. Rasool. So the option and the viability of this option of forming a military alliance on the platform of OIC, India being a nuclear power, Pakistan being a nuclear power, Kashmir happening to the nuclear flashpoint, just by a mere visit of OIC Secretary General, Indian authorities are offended so much. So what sort of reaction would there be by Indian side when there could be a collective Muslim military alliance?
If we just launch a missile, there is always an Indian reaction. It is nothing new. But when you need allies, a strong, sustainable allies to cooperate, when you will move any resolution either in United Nations General Assembly or they may support in United Nations Human Rights Council, and then you will proceed towards United Nations Security Council. So we are desperate needed the allies, those allies which upon whom we can trust, number one. But how you can create their allies is a big question. So there should be an interest. The interest is the only link. When I requested you, but rather I put this suggestion couple of times that how Pakistan can put this suggestion that it can be implicable in the OIC platform, because Pakistan is the strongest hard power nation, having the nuclear power and the strongest army. So Pakistan can be having the leverage in the security issues of the OIC. And definitely when you are creating some sort of interest internationally, because it is only interest and interest and interest which works in international relations. When you have interest in the relations, they will support your foreign policy. They will support your Kashmir question. They will support your Kashmir in the United Nations Human Rights Council. When we can move a resolution from Human Rights Council, we can move resolution from United Nations General Council.
Right.
We moved a resolution in 1984 in the United Nations Human Rights Council. 4 countries supported us. One tried to support us, but at the 11th hour they withdrawn the support. So if we just need 9 countries to support to move a United Nations Human Rights Council resolution to United Nations General Council, remaining countries always remain the silent, and we can move the resolution. So we have to take some concrete steps.
Right.
And to take the concrete steps, you have to do some sort of homework, and that homework is an internationally homework. Since state is a unit of analysis,
Your point is
Pakistan
well
is
taken.
unit of analysis. It can be done only by state, not non-state actors.
Right,
like-
your point is well taken. Dr. Rasool, India revoked Article 370 on the pretext of bringing in development and prosperity into that particular region. Has there been any change, any development or prosperity ever since that revocation took place, or the things have worsened, or the reign of terror has been unleashed even with more force?
Actually, our lovable audience should be clear. It is not the issue of the development, issue of the roads, issue of the electricity. It is issue to right of self-determination, number 1. Number 2, you have to make it clear India had lost in the Kashmir. Now, where they are controlling land, not masses. Masses are resisting. Now, you are saying me, what is the solution? Solution is same. In
Right.
1889, Germany was divided in 16 parts, again reunited. Again it was divided after post-World War II in 2 parts, again a superpower. So crosses and troughs are part of the movement. We have to be ready for
Right,
that.
very pertinently put forth. Dr. Kausar, Dr. Rasool says it is not the matter of development, roads or any other amenities or facilities. It is the universal principle of right to self-determination.
See, before that, I just want to say one thing when you talk about that military alliances.
Please
just
go
one-
ahead.
One point. I guess the world doesn't need military alliances more. In fact, it needs alliances based on certain principles and value system. That is lacking, and that is sort of what we see, the decay in that. So I guess OIC as a big organization promoting cooperation, I guess should work towards building bridges, bringing communities together. There are many areas where there are unresolved conflicts upon Muslim communities as well in the world as well. There are many case studies, and still they are there. So I guess in this, instead of further polarizing the people and the world, I guess we need to see that how we can develop human capital, how we can cooperate on economic and social and other bases. That develops your clout. Alone military thing, I don't think so develops your clout. We have the example of Russia having a huge military power, but economically it was not doing well, so we have seen the situation. So I guess this is the direction that Muslim, if they want to, as an organization, want to promote, I mean, cooperation among the Muslim community, they also see the areas like, science, technology, and I guess this all brings your clout and interdependence beyond religions, beyond other things, I guess. So that's my point over there. On particularly Kashmir, as Dr. Rasool well said, I mean, the only thing is, over the period of time, what we have seen is that the spaces for civil liberty, the spaces for particularly political spaces and other have been reduced. Post 5th of August, there is a systematic pattern of doing away with the political authority, of course, and then, of course, socio-economic and other dynamics of the society, which is not good. I mean, the international organization report says about the psychological disorders in the people. You have the issues of human rights, you have the gender issues, you have environmental issues, and there are many other issues particularly. The problem is right now, if you gag the media, if you just, clamp down on media and nothing is coming out genuinely, this is a serious thing that world's bodies should take action on and should take it seriously, because if you suspend fundamental rights and then sort of you are seizing their right to exist, that is a bigger question, and I guess that's a need of people, those who believe in these all civil liberties, democracy, democratic values, should voice these concerns and tell people that there are issues of divided families, there are issues of half widows, there are issues of mass graves, there are a lot of human rights and other issues. And I guess those are not coming out right now and not well placed and informed to the international community. That is the pure responsibility. I totally agree, these are the phases, I must say. Occupation at the end of the day is occupation. you have to, I repeatedly say, a political dispute needs a political answer. You cannot, solve it militarily. You have to talk, you have to politically solve, and of course, through a democratic mean. And that is there.
But
what
India
we are
used
talking.
force to come in illegally.
But it's not
over there.
helping. It's not helping anyway. That's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, they have to give that democratic rights to the people, because history says you cannot suppress people for so long and then continue, and then you portray yourself to be a democracy and the value system if you want to show to the world. No. At the end of the day, you have to be answerable to all these things.
Right. Brigadier Nawaz, there have been a lot of atrocities ever since the revocation of Article 370, worse methods of suppression, including torture, use of pellet guns, use of human shields, rape against women as a weapon of war, and extrajudicial killings are rampant, then silencing journalists, putting the activists into notorious jails, and complete communication blackout, and the draconian laws, which have been dubbed as draconian by the international human rights organizations, including the Human Rights Watch, as well as the Amnesty International, like the Public Safety Act and Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. They're all there. So after employing these strategies, don't you think Indian authorities should have a realization that these tactics would only give more force to that freedom struggle in Kashmir?
The point is the Indian government is totally just they are gone mad. The Prime Minister, then of course Ajit Shah, Ajit Jawad, then Rajnath Singh, they are the extremist Hindus. And they are following the teachings of RSS, and that is what they are following it. And their agenda is only to do terrorism, extremism, and use brutal force. Have they used any brutal force against Hindus in India? They say Kashmiris are part, then if it is your part, then that's what you do with Muslims. So that is what is the point of view. The issue is that now they have bent upon, they are going to change their Hindu assembly seats in Jammu and Kashmir. They are, I think, going to become at par, and most likely next time the chief minister through elections is going to be Indian, Hindu Indian. So that is what they are all planning. They have changed all demographic changes. The point is, who stops it? Where are the human rights champions? We talk about American, the NATO, Europe, a lot of democracy, a lot of human rights. Where are those human rights when we talk about Amnesty International? Nobody bothers, they look to the other side. So the point is, you have to first strong yourself, then you look toward others and they will be attracted towards you. So our region should be very strong. We have to convince Russia and China, Iran and Pakistan itself that this region is volatile. And if there is any war, then it is going to be very, very serious consequences ultimately for region and ultimately for the world. If we try to convince these countries, then it is going to have more effect. Then they can plead a case when it goes to the United Nations. So this is what we have to plan strategically. Indians want hegemonic designs, and they find Pakistan as the most stumbling block in this region. They have overpowered all small countries, but then Pakistan is a sovereign country, we are a nuclear country, we are a very battle-hardened army, and that's what India knows it. That's why they don't look towards Pakistan. But then we have to move with the world. We have to move the Islamic world. We have to move to the international community. We have to convince them. Haven't we seen EU Decision for Left, how much they are having interest and how they are fighting fifth generation war? They have already attacked Pakistan. So all these things are multiplying and people are buying their thought process. They don't agree what we say. They buy them because they have already convinced the world that Pakistan is doing a lot of terrorism. Where it is the other way around. Pakistan is the most victim of terrorism, and then Indians are doing already. Kulbhushan Yadav is a big example for them, but nobody talks about it. So we have to be talking from a point of view of very strength, more strength. When we are strong, people will listen to you. When we are weak,
Right.
nobody will look toward us. So we have to make this strategy and we move accordingly. Then we can do it. It's not that we
Right.
make NATO type Islamic force, but then we have to carry development. Nobody will talk that, let's say, a lot of resistance about going for military hardware, so many things. At least have you in Islamic Bank? Who stops it? You see, in Americans and the Europeans, they come, they drill out, they give money to Europeans, or administrative countries, that goes into the banks, it becomes World Bank and IMF, and again they give poor, all with all interest to poor countries. So we have to be blamed ourselves. Today is the day we decide that we have to ensure that Kashmiri gets a right of self-determination, and for that we gear up all things. Where is our Kashmir committee? I don't see. The most individuals who have no communication skills, they are made part of Kashmir committee. The best communication skill people should become part of it, and then they go and plead their cases. Being Kashmiri, and Kashmir should be part of this Kashmir committee. Then people will listen to them. So we should not do
Right.
lip service. We have to do actual practical things.
Right, right. Dr. Rasool, when we talk about the kind of tactics which are being employed by the Indian authorities over there in IIO-JK, what does it basically lead to? There's been a stride on the part of Indian authorities to change demography over there, also changing the electoral rolls over there as well. Now, does it only lead to giving more force to that indigenous freedom movement, or does it also lead for people to migrate from there as well?
Indian modus operandi is lethal. It is multidimensional and it has the severe repercussions on our existence. Nowadays, our movement is the sort of existentialist movement, and we are striving for an identity. So definitely it is a very vital stage of our freedom movement. When India had used its all might, hard power to kill and crush the movement with the iron fist. But actually you have to understand the dynamics of the movement. The people who resist, they were already knowing that we are fighting against the mighty India. There is a huge gap between the freedom fighters who are struggling for the freedom and an Indian army. They were knowing it well. Number two, we have successfully transformed our movement in the youth. Now it is the fifth generation in play. They are well equipped with social media, the conventional media. They are raising their question globally wheresoever they live. Either they are in America, they are in European Union, or any sort of Islamic. They are trying their utmost. So this is a time to transform our movement from the certain emblems which has been crushed by India. But you have to see that when you are talking about the movement, it is never static. It keeps moving.
Right.
Not only on one direction. It is not you have caged the political leaders and you have transformed them from the various, tried to get them away from the valley, from their homes, and you have put them in the Tehari jail or the jails of the India, particularly Yasin Malik, Nusrat Alam,
Right.
our sisters, three sisters, Asiya and Nahid Nasreen. But it doesn't mean that you are caging the freedom voice and you are successful
there.
to cage
It remains intact.
It remains.
Its
It is
force
deep-hearted.
grows
It is
with
deep-hearted.
every single person
The
there.
sentiment
Your
is
point is well
deep-hearted.
taken. Unfortunately,
Definitely
we are
have
short
to
of
face the
time.
brunt.
One last remark by you, Dr. Kausar, regarding the responsibility of the United Nations Security Council when such an aggressor or the country or the party which is trying to evade from the relevant resolutions, what sort of action the United Nations Security Council is mandated to take?
See, of course, it depends upon the nature of the resolution. One, second, of course, UN at the end of the day talks and deals with the countries. It doesn't, in itself, it doesn't do anything. I mean, it talks with countries. There are mechanism. Keep on pushing that. I guess the idea is that, of course, there's a clear violation of these resolutions since long, 47, 48, 49. If we see, what we can do is that we keep on pushing on the international forums, keep on knocking the doors, power corridors, telling the world, hitting their conscience that this is their moral, social, political and democratic responsibility and the legal responsibility as well towards the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, one more thing, I mean, it's not only the violation of UNSC, of course. Even if we see internally, both India and Pakistan also have agreed that they cannot unilaterally change the demography of the region, and particularly what happened in post 5th of August. That is a clear violation of not only national bilateral arrangements, but of course at the international level as well. So I guess the idea is to keep pushing, keep talking to the people,
and keep talking and highlighting this particular issue at all international fora. Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, expert foreign affairs, thank you very much for your time, for being with us at Views on News tonight. Dr. Waleed Rasool, Kashmiri leader, thank you very much for your time, also for being on Views on News. And on Skype we were joined by Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz, senior analyst. Brigadier Nawaz, thank you very much for your time also. We really appreciate that. And that's all from today's Views on News. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.